Hello, everyone. Welcome to another amazing episode of Outside the Studio. My name is Tessa. I am your host. I almost just forgot my name. Wow, it's been a bit of a Monday already. I'm very honored and looking forward to today's conversation with Dan Sykes. He is the author of Somatic Fanatic, which is a book and also a podcast that he hosts on YouTube. Somatic Fanatic, the book, How Training My Nervous System with the World's Master Instructors Helped Me Beat My Midlife Crisis, is definitely a topic I want to dive into with Dan today. I want to read a little bit of your bio, Dan, to introduce you because it's so well written and I think it'll help us start a really engaging conversation. So by age 40, Dan Sykes seemed to have all the cash and prizes most men want: the beautiful wife, the happy kids, the thriving business, without ever surrendering to a mundane life. That is until everything unraveled. So after a difficult divorce, Sykes felt old, heavy, and not thrilled to embark on bachelor life with a gut all while his ex-wife raised their 3 kids next door in their small Maine town. Feeling mentally, physically, and emotionally broken, Sykes set out to change his life by finding out who he really is. And then, so Dan, this is when you, it sounds like, went to a Paris seminar. You stumbled into the world of Systema, which I think you could take it from here and help us dive into your story. What do you think?
Sure. Tess, thanks so much for having me on. Yeah, this is really, it all came together for me. We sold our company, my ex-wife and I. She had founded the company and I was a filmmaker at the time. And at a certain point, I stopped filmmaking and joined the effort to grow our family company with my ex-wife and our Russian partner. And we worked at that for about 10 or 12 years and wound up selling our portion of the company to our Russian partner who wanted to expand worldwide. And we kind of weren't really up for that. And a lot of the growth of the company had happened under his supervision in Russia. We went from 6 employees to 250 full-time employees over about 10 years. And he wanted to keep going, and we sort of were at the end of the line, and the company had sort of outgrown us in a lot of ways. So we sold, and we're very comfortable and well set financially. And I wanted to go back to filmmaking. And did. I wrote, produced, directed, and starred in a feature film that we shot entirely in Russia. And I probably threw myself into it a little bit much and was a little absent emotionally for those years I was working on that film. But really, I think, as my ex said to me at one point when we really were deciding we were going to go our separate ways, was we had come through this 20-year adventure together and built this amazing life, but had really come to the end of that push to get ourselves from living paycheck to paycheck to being comfortable. And we both wanted very, very different things. You know, I wanted to use that comfort as a platform to get back to something that meant something to me deep inside. Although we were financially successful, I felt no artistic or emotional or spiritual satisfaction from anything we had done to become successful, and really was aching to get back to a life of music and creativity. She really didn't want anything to do with that and wanted a practical life. And so by the time I got to the end of making my film and taking it to festivals and or trying to take it to festivals, it became clear that we were not going to get picked up. This movie I had spent 4 years of my life making was not going to have a commercial life. And maybe not by coincidence, right as that happened, my ex also said we needed to talk. And so suddenly my marriage was over in any practical sense. And not only did my film fail, but I realized that if I kept self-financing movies, that I was going to be out of money. And it was either that or go this same road I decided to not go down all those years ago, where I'm trying to convince other people to fund films of mine. And I didn't want that life either. So I really felt stuck. I felt trapped, and I really felt the bottom was coming out from under me. I also was probably about 50 pounds heavier than I am now, and always had been my whole life. I had lived most of my life really very much in the head. I was never into sports, not even doing them, but any interest in them. I have no idea who won the Super Bowl this year, and or any year, or the World Series or anything. It just was not. I was a music guy and a movie guy, and so as I was in this moment of extreme emotional pain and despair, I had met while filming my movie these retired Russian special forces guys who practice a little known martial art called Systema. It's a military martial art, and they don't have set moves and combination moves. What they do is they do extreme training to train the nervous system, to bring the nervous system to a very high level of function, and to train to get excess tension out of the body, like we know yoga does, and other disciplines like yoga do this, Tai Chi, Qigong, and many of the ancient disciplines. The Russians just do it. The Russian military just does this in a very fast manner. And it's not always so pleasant, but they get the tension out of your body very quickly. And I met them, but I was so frightened. I saw myself as very weak and with a very low tolerance for pain. So when I found myself in all this pain, I finally decided, I'm going to train with these guys. Something has to give in my life. And that was the beginning of my interest in training the nervous system. I felt so out of shape that I started taking local yoga lessons to sort of prepare myself to train with these brawny guys that I was afraid of. And in the year I was doing yoga more and more and more, I had this strange feeling like I'm going to do yoga until I switch over to Systema, but I'm not really a yoga guy. By the time I started taking Systema classes and went to this seminar you're talking about, I was doing yoga 6 days a week, and I met all these people, and they were part of my life. And suddenly I came to one of the first epiphanies I talk about in the book, Somatic Fanatic, is I don't have to switch teams. I don't have to stop doing yoga to do Systema. It's not an issue of joining a team and only one team. And I came to the first conclusion that really helped me so much in that training. You're in sports, you kind of pick your sport, you pick your team, you're on that team, that's it. You're not on another team. Training your nervous system, I view more like music or food, where of course you're looking for a genre of music or a type of cuisine that seems like your home cuisine. Mm-hmm. But that doesn't mean that you're not eating other cuisines as they come across your plate. You don't have to choose. It's all here for our benefit. Mm-hmm. And the nervous system actually desires both consistency and variety. And the nervous system learns best actually by mixing disciplines and mixing approaches, especially when you're mixing the gentle arts and the martial arts that are aimed toward nervous system training. That the two sides of that coin get your level up. If you're doing yoga and you start to do Tai Chi or some kind of nervous system based martial art, your yoga level will go up and up. If you do Feldenkrais method, your yoga level will go up. And by the same token, if you're a martial arts person, I urge them to take up a yoga practice or a Qigong practice or Feldenkrais or something in the gentle arts, and they will find their martial art level going up much faster than it would otherwise.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. So there's so many questions I have, so many directions I want to go. And something that you said just now in terms of nervous system training and the idea of taking all these different methods that are here for us to train the nervous system, I want to get a little bit more granular with that. And I'll tell you what I mean by that. So I was recently involved in a workshop where one of my really good friends is an emotional hygiene coach. And the theory behind, there are many different aspects to this work, but one of the theories is that nervous system work requires us to, or asks us it asks of us to be able to go in between the state of parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system response. And oftentimes, what we see happening is an inability to get fully into sympathetic, fight, flight, and have that full expression and have that, whatever it is, anger, fear, released and expressed from the body, and or we're not able to fully rest. So we're not able to fully sit in parasympathetic nervous system response. But what often happens is we're kind of stuck outside of one extreme or the other. And that's where you see things like chronic anxiety and an inability to feel your anger or express your anger in a safe way. Or maybe it's or if it's fear, maybe you don't know how to turn that fear alarm off. Kind of like there's this example she uses about, let's say your alarm clock goes off in the morning, and ideally you're able to turn over and press the button to turn your alarm clock off, right? So let's say the alarm clock is our fear alarm. And instead of turning your alarm clock off, you instead take that alarm clock, put it around a huge chain, and carry it around with you all day. And then it's like really annoying to yourself and probably annoying to others around you because you have this alarm clock going off 24/7 that you don't know how to turn off, and that you never get to fully release from that state of fear or anxiety. So my understanding of this kind of work is, and I want to hear your opinion about this too, is to be able to fully experience both ends of the spectrum in a way that allows us to express our emotions, because our emotions are tools and they're here for a reason. And if fear is going off, it is for a reason. If anger is coming up, it is a tool, just like any other emotion is a tool. And we don't really, in our society, in our day and age, we don't really do anger very well. And oftentimes for a lot of us, it is an unsafe emotion to have because we don't know how to express it in a way that is helpful or safe. And yeah, so I think I'm going to stop there, and I'd like to hear your thoughts on this.
Yeah, in the 10 years I've been going in between so many disciplines and training with so many masters around the world and meeting their students and training with their, sub master level guys, I have come to feel that there are two basic alarm clocks people are wearing around their neck, to use your analogy. There is the alarm clock, and I'll say the reason there's two different ones, I'll circle back to what I said before. The vast majority of people who are training their nervous systems, even if they're doing it in ancient arts that don't use the word nervous system, because a lot of the arts that train nervous systems were all developed thousands of years before the nervous system was known to be as we now know it is. So most of the ancient arts express things in a different way with chakras and energy and such that now science shows us is actually the nervous system. But the words nervous system are not in these disciplines. So so many people who have even been immersed in many of these disciplines for a long time, when I say to them, you're training your nervous system, a surprising number of people are surprised by this, when this actually is the case. But most people involved in training their nervous system are either doing exclusively what I call the gentle arts or exclusively martial arts. And this develops two kinds of alarm clocks. I'll start with the fighters first. The fighters are definitely doing training that is getting them into the sympathetic state and teaching them all kinds of techniques of breath and attention and movement to get yourself back to a parasympathetic state or down from panic. When we're in panic and the amygdala part of our brain fires, the frontal lobe stops firing. It's almost in exact measure. So it's hard to think, it's hard to make decisions. And as the phrase says, it's usually the panic that kills you because you can't function, you can't think. And while this is very good training, if all you're training to do is fight for 30 years, then to some degree or another, everything that is unexpected, uncomfortable, disagreeable becomes a fight in your mindset. And that's the alarm clock of, oh, I'm in a fight now. whether it's a traffic jam, it's road rages, whatever it is, everything becomes a fight. That's the danger. Not everybody falls subject to this, but I've seen this happen a lot. And in the gentle arts, what happens is people talk to me about how they're healing. And I'm healing. I've been healing for 10 years. I've been healing for 20 years. Just a few months ago, I was at training and a woman told me how something disagreeable happened to her, not violent, but just really disturbed her. And it was preventing her from doing something in her life that she wanted her to do 3 years later. But my healing process is coming along very nicely, she said. And this is a yoga person, exclusively yoga. And I said, I just want to ask you a question. If you had cut your arm 3 years ago and we were sitting here talking and you had a bandage on your arm because your arm was still bleeding, would you tell me that your healing process is coming along nicely? So the problem with the gentle arts is that it can slowly switch. The word healing is used so liberally in these arts that you can substitute healing for this sense of permanent healing. A martial artist would say, if you're healing for 20 years, you're not healing, because healing should start, have a middle point and an end. And then once the healing's done, you should be now heading toward thriving. That should be the point of your training. So the gentle arts, like the fighters see everything as a fight, the gentle arts can come to this misunderstanding that healing is a permanent lifestyle. And I say that's not healing. That's building a shrine to your pain. That's celebrating your pain and convincing yourself that I can handle it, even though my pain is still there. It's not healing from the pain. So these two attitudes, I think, are the alarm clock you're talking about. And I think I have come to feel that the gentle arts give you a sense of self that gives you self-respect in a spiritual sense and in an enduring sense and in a long sense, while martial arts training gives you a sense of self about being a living, wiggling, squiggling creature on this planet right now. And yes, you may be giving me a hard time and maybe I've got a problem because you're coming at me, but maybe you have a problem too, my friend. And these two different vantage points of self-image, I feel together are a holistic sense of being a living yet spiritual being on this planet.
Yeah, beautiful. I love that. Yeah, that's, you just articulated something that I think has been kind of in the background of my mind for a while as I am in the industry of health and wellness, in particular teaching yoga and meditation. There is this kind of like almost like shrine. You're right. There's kind of like a shrine to the healing and the trauma. And I think what I'm wondering about that is, if you think about someone who experiences extreme trauma in childhood and that's something that's internalized and it's kind of under the line of awareness, and that maybe you might argue that some people, it takes us until like we're in our 30s to start doing that internal work, that interoception, coming to the healing process of that trauma, right? So we're carrying around all of this baggage, as it were, for lack of a better word, and not to
some of us later than our 30s,
right? Yeah,
I was past my 30s when I finally had to begin my journey towards dealing with some of this stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in my experience, there's no particular timeline. But I do think there's, like, if you're into astrology, there's something to be said for the Saturn return and all of that unconscious coming to the conscious state and asking you to look a little bit deeper if you are inclined to. So there's almost like this universal invitation to pay attention, whether you do or not. But I think my specific question around this is, when it's so like ingrained, like if you think about it from a neurobiological perspective, that neuroplasticity groove is so deep. Does it take longer to heal, or is it really that, I think about this. Here's a good example. If you have like a physical injury in your body, you've been running with your right toe pointed out to the side because you tweaked your ankle and you've been running on your ankle and your knee like this for like 10 years, it's not going to reverse itself overnight. It might take some time to heal and recorrect and restructure the running posture. So, and you said, you know, if you, what did you say, about 3 years? If you're still on your healing journey past like 30 years or 3 years, there was a 3 in there somewhere.
Well, yeah, I had said to her, she was saying how her healing process is coming along nicely, even though she's still not doing this thing she wants to do.
Right.
And
Yes.
I said, well, if you had cut your arm 3 years ago and it was still bleeding, would you be telling me that your healing process is coming along nicely?
Right. So
And
how
somehow
do
with emotional pain, we allow a longer time to heal culturally than a physical ailment, which we would have an expectation has a certain time frame where that healing should be happening. With emotional pain, we're only in the very beginning years of so many really effective trauma excising techniques, like Peter Levine's technique with somatic experiencing and other things like this, that PTSD has only been even understood for less than 10 years or 15 at the most in a major way. So we have cultural habits that were formed in relationship to emotional healing. These habits and expectations were formed during hundreds and thousands of years where these techniques were unknown and did not exist. So we have come to view emotional healing as this decades-long process that has to happen. But we live in an amazing moment where there's actually things available to radically speed that up for us.
Yeah.
But
Well,
they're very new.
Yes, it's not that I disagree with you. I feel like this is one of those topics that I feel like could be very controversial. I wonder if you experience it as you're kind of going around talking about trauma and healing from PTSD in this way. Are you experiencing pushback on this idea that you can heal that kind of complex PTSD that maybe you were born into or you've had since infancy or childhood? Are people agreeing with you? Is there pushback on this? What are you finding?
Well, certainly the Somatic Experiencing Institute and Peter Levine's work and the practitioners that he's certifying are still very few in number. So it is a relatively unknown thing. I also know other people that are healing post-traumatic stress disorder with binaural beats and sound things. It's possible to get rid of it very quickly through flashing light technology. And there's more and more technologies where you can literally walk into a practitioner's office, especially with the sound and with somatic experiencing. What's amazing is, for the practitioner, is now the practitioner doesn't have to hear your stories. I'm going to backtrack a little bit. The psychoanalysis way of trying to fix PTSD, which is still practiced by the Veterans Association in the United States, is called immersion therapy. And they do 30 rounds of this, where once a week you are asked to describe your trauma. And if you don't remember your trauma, like from childhood, you describe what triggers you, and you trigger your state of panic, sympathetic reaction, and there's various talking techniques that are done when you're in this state. But there's a lot of problems with this approach. One, it's 30 weeks of this, of reliving your trauma 30 times. So a few things happen. One is the therapists who do this all day, every day, wind up becoming traumatized over time. Their life is hellish because they're hearing 8 of these stories a day, every day. And that becomes their life. It's sort of like being a homicide detective or something. It's very rough for the practitioner to hear these stories again and again. And the stats are really dismal. The stats in the VA are that only 30% of people who do this immersion therapy for 30 weeks show that their symptoms go away for PTSD. 30% show no change at all, and 40% are re-traumatized and their symptoms get worse. That is an absolutely real statistic that is pretty damning on that approach, but it is the standard approach. That's the approach that the VA is willing to pay for veterans to experience, even though it has dismal stats and a lot of risk emotionally. What Peter Levine started and what many disciplines are doing now, and what the people going after PTSD with this various gear, they're having you imagine, not speak out loud. You imagine the traumatic event, or if you can't remember it, the things in your life that trigger you to feel this feeling. You imagine it. And then you're either your attention is drawn to your physical body. In somatic experiencing, the basic thing they do is they make you react, and then they say, what does your neck feel like? What does the back of your neck feel like? What does your chest feel like? Your stomach? They make you feel your body, because what Peter Levine discovered is that when we have an emotional feeling, part of the reason we call emotions feelings is because you cannot have an emotional reaction without a physical reaction, and you cannot have a physical reaction without an emotional reaction. There's no way to do it. We study these things separately. We study physiology and psychology separately, only because they're such a vast subject in and of themselves that we have to artificially divide these things to study them. But your physiology and psychology are never for 1 second of your life separate. They are one unit that we're artificially separating to study them. But we aren't made of parts. We're made of a seed that grows, and our parts are always interacting. So when I try to explain this principle that your emotions and physicality are completely linked all the time, imagine that there's a man who maybe he has road rage. Somebody cut him off. They stop. He's getting out of his car. He's shouting at the other driver. He's very engaged. If someone comes up behind that man with a day-old kitten and just starts rubbing that day-old kitten on the back of his neck, he will calm down. He has no choice but to calm down. That lovely, luscious feeling will temper his emotions. By the same token, if you get off a train and you see your long-lost whoever after 10 years and you're so excited and gushing over with love and appreciation, and someone drops a bowling ball on your foot, your mood will change instantly. These are extreme examples of what's happening to us all day, every day. So what Peter Levine discovered was that if you feel jealous, say, I'm here, the person I want is with somebody else, oh my God, this emotional reaction you're experiencing, but you're also experiencing a pattern of muscle contraction happening in your body in reaction to that emotion. And that pattern feels like jealousy. What Dr. Levine discovered is that if you instigate that emotion, draw people's attention to their physicality, and cause them to let go of certain tensions while they're still feeling that emotion, after doing that a number of times, the nervous system starts reevaluating that relationship and rewrites these circuits, and it improves both what they call the tonus, the amount of contraction in your body. It reduces this chronic tension, is what I call it. You know, the Feldenkrais people call it excess tonus. That's the $20 word for it. Chronic tension, muscles that are contracted when you don't want them to be, and you can't tell them to uncontract. That's chronic tension. And all of these things are happening as we have emotional reactions. And the somatic experiencing method to overcome PTSD is to get that trigger to happen and have you release certain muscles and feel a different physical feeling set against that emotion. And that starts to break things down and makes it feel safer for you to psychologically look right at that trauma and muster the strength to look it right in the face and let it go. Most of our trauma is a memory that we really don't want to look at, even though it's there. And that cycle of panicking because the memory's in our head, in a very simplistic way, it is what PTSD is all about. And it's a habituated reaction for the amygdala, the panic zone of our brain, to fire full hot instead of a little bit to that memory or something that brings back that memory. Somebody beeps a horn, whatever your trigger is, and your amygdala fires full on, your frontal lobe goes real quiet. Somatic experiencing, and there's gear that makes you go into this state and disrupts that habituated pattern. And once you disrupt that habituated pattern enough minutes, the neuroplasticity kicks in, and those automatic chemical electrical signals that are triggering that extreme reaction get rewritten and it stops. So we live in an amazing moment where there are options available to us that were never available to humans before.
Mm-hmm. So, can you walk me through what something like that might look like or feel like in terms of, let's say I have chronic pain in my neck and shoulders, which I do. You would this be like a guided kind of meditation? Would we have to trigger me in some way? How would we go through the process of releasing that?
Does your neck start hurting when you feel that you're getting triggered, or is it hurting all the time?
It's hurting all the time.
Okay. Well, this is the sort of more everyday version of that. You have habituated tension in your muscles and some of it might be there from successive traumas that have happened over your life. Some of them might be there from inefficiencies of movement. Who knows? So what I discovered all somatic arts are based on, all movement arts. And we were just talking about somatic experiencing. That is a word-based art. So we're going back now to the world of yoga and Tai Chi and movement and touch-based arts. Mm-hmm. What we want to do, what I discovered is that all of these arts are based on one principle. It's a completely natural capacity we have, and any animal with a nervous system has it, that we can recalibrate our nervous system through combining two things simultaneously: very slow motion movement or touch, where you're moving someone for them, but very, very slowly, and coaching someone to focus their mind on what that movement feels like while it's happening very slowly. And this is why it works. Our nervous systems must make habits. They have to make habits for us. We can't learn nothing, or we can't survive. So as a matter of efficiency, we slowly learn. Any movement we make is thousands and hundreds of thousands of commands to contract individual muscle cells or let individual muscle cells go. And we're monitoring where gravity is. And even if I do this very simple movement of just raising my hand up, there's thousands and thousands of commands actually happen. They're way beyond my ability to consciously command. I think we can do about 16 of those things at a time. But our nervous system is taking in hundreds of thousands of pieces of data per second. Smell, temperature, every little color you see, all of it. Most of it goes unnoticed. And the job of the nervous system is to kind of discount most of it, so our energy is expended being safe, getting our food, whatever it is that we need to, finding our mate, whatever it is. So sort of just like a spy agency might be taking in a lot of information, but they can only take action on analyzed data. Your nervous system is the same. It's taking in a tremendous amount of data, and because it can't keep analyzing it, it makes habits. So if I raise my hand like that, I'll raise my hand like the way I've been doing that for 20 years, because my nervous system is not calculating every little move. It's shooting my hand up. And even though there's thousands of commands, there's a little thing already in my brain of how I raise my hand. But the nervous system also needs to be recalibrated, because these habits go out of efficiency over time. So when you move in slow motion movement like I am now, I cannot use a habit. It's too slow. And if I'm trying to feel my arm, it's extending the time I can analyze it. So if I'm analyzing the feeling of my arm, say I'll do the typical one people do is, what is the muscle that's doing the most work as I raise my arm? I'm going to feel the burn, the famous feel the burn. Most of the time, if your muscles are burning, it means one muscle, and for this, it's usually this one for everybody, is doing too much work, actually. It's taking too much of its burden. So I can feel that. I can aim my attention at 3 flavors of sensation as I raise my arm. Now, I'm not using habit. I can't. It's way too slow. I can feel tension, which is, where is the tension? I'd say, I feel pretty relaxed, but say the tension's here. A lot of the work's getting done here. For some people, it'll be done in the traps. Now I can do this. So I can do this several times and try to feel less tension, like you would in yoga or anything when you're doing a posture repeatedly. The goal always is to, every time you do a posture, you should be doing it with less effort. That's always the goal in any somatic discipline. But we can also get more out of our yoga by doing this little trick I learned over time. So I can raise my arm and feel the tension. Mm-hmm. Then I can do some more turns and I can raise my arm and feel ease. Where is there already ease? Mm. So for me, under my shoulder feels easeful. The ribs feel like they're spreading. A lot of people, their ribs are locked tight, but for me, it feels easeful. My fingers feel easeful. Even though my shoulder might be doing a lot of work, I can still feel ease in my wrist. I can rotate my arm. I'm doing it faster than I would, but I can move and rotate and feel the easeful connection with the rest of my body. Mm. And then there's a third option, a third flavor of sensation that we can aim our nervous system towards, and that is pleasure. I can raise my arm, and now I can feel what is delicious. I feel that the side of my neck feels a little pull down the trap. That feels very delicious. I would say my bottom rib right now feels a little sense of getting pulled as the arm goes up, as the flesh, as the fascia pulls. It feels nice and delicious down at the bottom of my rib. And what I have found is no matter what discipline you're doing, no matter what your teacher says, you can just silently decide during your yoga class, okay, for the next posture, I'm going to feel where is the most tension in my body and what can I let go of? And now we move on to now spend 5 minutes doing that. And now we go to pigeon pose. I'm going to feel what is already easeful in my body as I do pigeon pose. I'm going to change the flavor I'm aiming my attention toward. Mm-hmm. And then you can do the same thing. Now I'll do another pose and I'm just going to feel what is delicious about this pose. And you can randomly change that flavor of sensation you're paying attention to. And this also, I found, speeds up this reprogramming of the nervous system, because the nervous system wants to be aware of all three of those general categories of sensation.
Mm-hmm. So slow down to speed up healing. Mm-hmm. I love that. That's great.
All you yoga people, you know fully well how important it is to do it slowly. It's the key ingredient. And you're also trying to feel it, because really what I was saying before about how so little of our movement can be consciously controlled, to it seems counterintuitive, but to train our nervous system, there really only is one thing we're in a position to do, and that is to train to feel more and more and more, to physically feel more and more and more, to calm the mind, to quiet the nervous system, to feel subtler and subtler aspects of what the nervous system is doing for efficient movement, to feel, I say, like sort of the beginner level is where you feel like a microscope, where you're feeling a spot in more and more and more detail, and then more and more spots in more and more detail over time, until you get maybe like the Buddha, who felt everything all at the same time. And maybe that's what enlightenment is complete feeling of every single part of your body all the time. So I tell people, most middle-aged people, we physically feel magnitudes less than we should be. A normal human being, a 3-year-old child, feels tremendously. They're only learning by feeling. We can learn through logic, or we can learn by physically feeling. And a 3-year-old, when they fall down the stairs, they relax on impact and to surprise, because they're feeling and they're adjusting, and they're not holding on to these ideas. They don't have enough ideas to hold on to. So they're just rolling down the stairs like a bag of potatoes, as I say to people when we're training. And it's no problem. When a 25-year-olds fall down the stairs, they break their leg, they break their arm, because they're reacting to the unexpected by tensing up. And trauma and the civilizing process, the terrible twos happen because suddenly the rules are changed on us. Everything is for us, and then it's for the group, and stand up straight and don't cry and do your homework. And this gets us into a habit by middle age where surprise and unpleasantness turn into physical tension in our body. And all the disciplines, including yoga, train us to learn more like an infant does, by feeling and by letting go to what is difficult, by learning to find strength by letting go the tension in our bodies.
Yeah, I love that. So for those of you listening to this episode, I highly recommend, if you want to see the speed, for reference of how slow Dan is moving his arm when he's talking about slowing movement down, definitely watch this episode on my YouTube channel, or probably on Dan's YouTube channel also. And then, so here's where I want to go now, Dan.
Yep.
I want to hear about, how do you integrate these practices into your daily life? Is it something that you do daily? Are there things on both end of your spectrum where you're activating your nervous system in a parasympathetic way and sympathetic way throughout each day of your life? Do you have like rituals to move through this nervous system regulation?
I do. I do what I call movement in the morning, and this is generally gentle. Mm-hmm. And I think at this point, it's probably a mixture of Feldenkrais method, Systema, and yoga, which are the three disciplines I'm most trained in. Mm-hmm. But I do kind of freely borrow and amalgamate movements from all of those disciplines. I now find myself not willing to stay on a mat in one spot in the room as much as I did years ago. Mm-hmm. So even though I'm doing yoga poses and things, I'm also rolling on the ground. I'm also rolling over objects. One thing I do a lot because I'm a singer is I roll on a hard, not the leather medicine ball, but that kind of basketball that doesn't yield, that heavy basketball kind of medicine ball. Mm-hmm. I roll on that, and I wouldn't recommend starting on that, but rolling on things to sort of self-massage and get a sense of balance. I do a lot of yoga poses and squats and things like that on a Bosu, so I'm getting balance training while I'm doing it, and I do those kinds of things in the morning. And then generally I'm doing some kind of very tough training. I'm certified in and receive a lot of Systema, what's called stick body work, where they drive sticks of various diameters into your back, into your legs, into your neck, and all kinds of stuff. And when you first do it, it's extremely painful. This is the thing that really turned my life around. I've had probably more than 300 hours of those kind of procedures now. So for me, it no longer registers as pain. My nervous system sees the benefit that even if I haven't done it in a while and I'm doing it and I feel a lot of pressure, in the old days, sticks poking into pressure engaged muscles cause pain. That's what we mostly think of as pain. I don't experience that so much anymore as pain. So what I'm doing now is I'm in the first 25% of a 45-day challenge of going in cold water every day. I'm doing 45 days of cold water immersion. Mm-hmm. That's doing the same thing, where it's an extreme sensation. Mm-hmm. It's we call it contrast therapy. So it's not a dangerous thing, but your nervous system reacts as if it is dangerous. Mm-hmm. And you do the same thing. I'm using various types of breathing methods and various types of moving my attention to around my body as to what I'm paying attention to, what is cold. If I feel the inside of my lungs, they are not cold. If I feel my shins, they're very cold. If I feel inside my throat, that is not very cold yet. So moving the attention around and breathing in certain ways to overcome that. I started at 50 seconds in the cold water, about 2 weeks ago or so. Mm-hmm. And I just did another one. I just did one a few days ago. I skipped a couple of days because I was in Florida. I'm going to do 2 dunks today. But the last time I did it, it was about 8 minutes. So, wow. And that's in a few weeks. Yeah. I learned some things about breathing that really made it much more tolerable. I was very surprised by. So I'm experimenting, I'm seeing, and I've already been through it with the sticks where I can see a day where even that cold water will not feel so disturbing, because I think the more and more your nervous system feels benefit from these more extreme techniques, the more it does not perceive those extreme sensations as pain. It just perceives them as intense, but not pain, not fearful. And so at the moment, that's what I'm doing. I'm doing cold water every day. I'm going to do it twice a day for the next couple of days to make up for the weekend when I didn't do it. But I'm going to do 45 cold plunges in 45 days. And many people say that after 6 weeks, it's not uncomfortable anymore. So I'm kind of hoping I might get into this cold water thing on a daily basis. We'll see if it's really true. If after 6 weeks it starts, they say you start to crave it. And I know with the sticks, my body craves the sticks and the impacts. We do a lot of a particular type of strikes with fists and looped whips, not getting whipped with the end of the whip, which would cut you or whatever, but almost like beating a rug, like a rug beater. You put the whip in a loop and strike with the side of the loop and a towel on. So you're feeling that impact. You're not really getting stung or anything like that. But that impact training and the stick training now feel just delicious. And they feel in a weird way, almost like a mother's hug to my system. They just feel very beneficial, but certainly it did not start that way. And I'm hoping the same thing will happen with the water.
How do you close out your day? Do you have any rituals that help you get ready for sleep? Is sleep an important part of your...
Sleep is an important part. And I have a ritual that I want to believe I do every night, but so far it really has not been. Maybe when my 45 cold water days are done, my next challenge will be to do this sleep ritual. But I would highly recommend to anyone doing something like Feldenkrais method just before sleep, which is extremely gentle nervous system training. More gentle, I would say more like restorative yoga, where you're not coming anywhere near breaking a sweat, nowhere near it. You are laying down for a lot of it, and you're moving to do things just easier and easier, but with your system as quiet as it can be, and trying to feel the subtle building blocks of movement and how you can coax your nervous system to have more and more of your body involved in any kind of movement. There's lots of free Feldenkrais recordings on the internet. And of course, at my company, we have live and online training of all nervous system training disciplines at somaticlab.live. That has live and on-demand training of all disciplines. Right now, we have about 20 instructors in about 8 disciplines. We're just starting our company. Over time, we're hoping to go to about 100 instructors in about 15 disciplines that we have earmarked. And of course, there's disciplines I haven't even heard of as well. So all nervous system training is welcome at somaticlab.live, but I would say quiet training at the end of the night, whether it's meditation or movement-based, but something to quiet the mind and quiet the body before sleep. I do often, but not as often as, like my morning, I do the same thing every day. But at night, it kind of depends what's going on.
Yeah, I can empathize with that. So Somatic Fanatic is out. It's available to have and to hold for your own, or listen to, I would imagine. Can you listen to it?
We're at the time we're recording this, we're about 2 weeks out from the audiobook existing,
cool.
and I'm reading it. So it'll be me talking about my life.
Great. Well, I love it. I love hearing the own author read their own story. There's such a different feel and flavor to it. It brings it to life in a different way, I believe. And so I'm looking forward to that. Thank you for doing that. And I'm wondering, to close out, my final question is, what do you hope people, if there were just one message, one key thing that really sunk in to folks who picked up Somatic Fanatic, what would it be?
I would say, for me, no matter what discipline you do, no matter how often you do it, to keep in mind that when you're training for strength is about discipline. It's about counting. It's about recording. It's about improving. It's about setting goals. And all of those are needed. But when you're training your nervous system, you have to set all of that aside. Never count reps when you're doing yoga. Never count how many times you're doing anything, because then you're in your logical mind. Do your yoga, do your Tai Chi. Remember, you're trying to learn when you're doing that the way an infant learns. You can learn by logic, which is what reps and counting and discipline are all about, or you can learn by feeling, the way an infant learns by feeling. And that is the natural capacity, learning as an infant, that every single one of these disciplines is trying to remind us of and trying to develop our capacity to learn the way an infant does, even though our lives get busy and full of complications and noise and responsibilities and disappointments and heartbreak and all the things that happen. You can take the time every day that when you are taking your time to do yoga, feel magnitudes more. I feel magnitudes more than I did 10 years ago when I started this. And I mean, not just a little more, magnitudes more. I feel, and it improves not just my movement, it will totally transform your love life. It will totally transform your life wrestling around with your kids on the floor. It'll totally transform your ability to get down on the floor. For some people, even getting down on the floor seems like a big challenge. So I would say, feel more, live more. That is what I would highly recommend.
I love that message. Thank you so much, Dan. It's been such a pleasure to speak with you. I'm excited for my yoga practice this week because I'm going to take your advice and feel into it more deeply. Feel into my toes, my fingernails, all those little extremities that I feel like we often forget about.
Awesome. I'm excited for you. Thanks so much for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, likewise. Well, everyone, that concludes another amazing episode of Outside the Studio. I hope you enjoyed yourself. I hope you learned something new, maybe remembered something old, maybe felt inspired to apply something to your life. You can hear my dog in the background. She's doing a little happy dance. So Daisy enjoyed it. Anyhow, I wanted to just pop in here to wrap us up to say a couple of things. Number one, I have such an amazing team that helps me put these podcasts together. Without them, I wouldn't, be able to bring these amazing conversations to you. So thank you to my producer, my director of creative services, my sound editor, my engineer, Consistency Media. Don't know what I would do without you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And the amazing creation and artistic musical genius, Drew Lovern. Thank you so much for putting together this music specifically for Outside the Studio. So unique to the show, only place you're ever going to hear it is right here. Thanks, you guys. You make my world go round. Stay well, everyone. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review, share on the socials, especially if it's a show that you think, hey, this could help somebody else. That's what this is all about, right? We're sharing information so that we're better, so that we're inspired, so that we're lifting each other up, and we're learning how to be in this world, living on this planet to the best of our ability, sharing information and inspiring one another. And that's my hope. That's my hope for the show. Take care.